Chapter 6 of The Death of Ivan Ilyitch by Leo Tolstoy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Ivan Ilyitch saw that he was dying and was in continual despair. At the bottom of his heart Ivan Ilyitch knew that he was dying, but so far from growing used to this idea, he simply did not grasp it. He was utterly unable to grasp it. The example of the syllogism that he had learned in Kiesweter's logic, Caius is a man, men are mortal, therefore Caius is mortal, had seemed to him all his life correct only as regards Caius, but not at all as regards himself. In that case it was a question of Caius, a man, an abstract man, and it was perfectly true, but he was not Caius, and was not an abstract man. He had always been a creature quite different from all others. He had been little Vanya, with a mamma and papa, and Mitya and Volodya, with playthings and a coachman and a nurse. Afterwards with Katenka, with all the joys and griefs and ecstasies of childhood, boyhood, and youth. What did Caius know of the smell of the leathern ball Vanya had been so fond of? Had Caius kissed his mother's hand like that? Caius had not heard the silk rustle of his mother's skirts. He had not made a riot at school over the pudding. Had Caius been in love like that? Could Caius preside over the sittings of the court? And Caius certainly was mortal, and it was right for him to die. But for me, little Vanya, Ivan Ilyitch, with all my feelings and ideas, for me it's a different matter. And it cannot be that I ought to die. That would be too awful. That was his feeling. If I had to die like Caius, I should have known it was so. Some inner voice would have told me so. But there was nothing of the sort in me, and I and all my friends, we felt that it was not at all the same as with Caius. And now, here it is, he said to himself. It can't be. It can't be, but it is. How is it? How's one to understand it? And he could not conceive it, and tried to drive away this idea as false, incorrect, and morbid, and to supplant it by other, correct, healthy ideas. But this idea, not as an idea merely, but as it were an actual fact, came back again and stood confronting him. And to replace this thought he called up other thoughts, one after another, in the hope of finding support in them. He tried to get back into former trains of thought, which in old days had screened off the thought of death. But strange to say, all that had in old days covered up, obliterated the sense of death, could not now produce the same effect. Latterly, Ivan Ilyitch spent the greater part of his time in these efforts to restore his old trains of thought which had shut off death. At one time he would say to himself, "I'll put myself into my official work. Why, I used to live in it." And he would go to the law courts, banishing every doubt. He would enter into conversation with his colleagues, and would sit carelessly, as his old habit was, scanning the crowd below dreamily, and with both his wasted hands he would lean on the arms of the oak armchair just as he always did, and bending over to a colleague, pass the papers to him and whisper to him. Then suddenly dropping his eyes and sitting up straight, he would pronounce the familiar words that opened the proceedings. But suddenly, in the middle, the pain in his side, utterly regardless of the stage he had reached in his conduct of the case, began its work. It riveted Ivan Ilyitch's attention. He drove away the thought of it, but it still did its work. And then it came, and stood confronting him, and looked at him, and he felt turned to stone, and the light died away in his eyes, and he began to ask himself again, can it be that it is the only truth? And his colleagues and his subordinates saw with surprise and distress that he, the brilliant, subtle judge, was losing the thread of his speech, was making blunders. He shook himself, tried to regain his self-control, and got somehow to the end of the sitting, and went home with the painful sense that his judicial labors could not, as of old, hide from him what he wanted to hide, that he could not, by means of his official work, escape from it. And the worst of it was that it drew him to itself, not for him to do anything in particular, but simply for him to look at it straight in the face, to look at it, and, doing nothing, suffer unspeakably. And to save himself from this, Ivan Ilyitch sought amusements, other screens, and these screens he found, and for a little while they did seem to save him. But soon again they were not so much broken down as let the light through, as though it pierced through everything, and there was nothing that could shut it off. Sometimes during those days he would go into the drawing-room he had furnished, that drawing-room where he had fallen, for which, how bitterly ludicrous it was for him to think of it, for the decoration of which he had sacrificed his life, for he knew that it was that bruise that had started his illness. He went in and saw that the polished table had been scratched by something. He looked for the cause, and found it in the bronze clasps of the album which had been twisted on one side. He took up the album, a costly one, which he had himself arranged with loving care, and was vexed at the carelessness of his daughter and her friends. Here a page was torn, here the photographs had been shifted out of their places. He carefully put it to rights again and bent the clasp back. Then the idea occurred to him to move all this etablissement of the albums to another corner where the flowers stood. He called the footman, or his daughter or his wife came to help him. They did not agree with him, contradicted him. He argued, got angry. But all that was very well, since he did not think of it. It was not in sight. But then his wife would say, as he moved something himself, "Do let the servants do it, you'll hurt yourself again." And all at once it peeped through the screen. He caught a glimpse of it. He caught a glimpse of it, but still he hoped it would hide itself. Involuntarily, though, he kept watch on his side. There it is just the same still, aching still. And now he cannot forget it, and it is staring openly at him from behind the flowers. What's the use of it all? And it's the fact that here, at that curtain, as if it had been storming a fort, I lost my life. Is it possible? How awful and how silly! It cannot be. It cannot be, and it is. He went into his own room, lay down, and was again alone with it. Face to face with it, and nothing to be done with it. Nothing but to look at it and shiver. End of chapter 6. Read by Laurie Ann Walden.